A lot of people ask, do I need a business plan to buy a business? Short answer, no, not in the traditional sense, but you do need a plan. Today's video will break down what you actually need planning wise to buy a business and operate it successfully. So let's start with the basics. A traditional business plan, especially for a small, mid-sized business, is that kind of 20-page plus document that goes through a ton of important stuff like the background, the market research, who your customers are, what your advertising plan is, what your hiring plan is, what your budgets are, what you plan to make, all that great stuff. And it is important to know those things. When you're buying a business, you already have a lot of that information, or you should have it if you're going to be making that purchase. You have the financials from the existing company. You have their staff records. You have their marketing already running, or should be already running, or at least what they've done in the past to know who they're targeting and why they're targeting them. So a lot of that stuff is already done for you before you go into the acquisition. So do you need to actually sit down and write a 25-page document that you might look at once and never pull out again? Probably not. Might not be the best use of your time. That's not to say that you shouldn't be thinking about these things, though. They are very important. Here are a couple of the things that you really want to focus on and maybe prepare ahead of time. And it doesn't need to be in some formal document called a business plan necessarily. First thing is the financials. So whether the selling company has everything in spreadsheets or in a good bookkeeping system that you can export into spreadsheets, would be a great place to start. Take those spreadsheets and start playing with your projections. Now, this doesn't mean you just make up fantasy numbers and pretend that you're going to be a billionaire in 2 years. This means that you realistically look at those numbers and figure out where you might be able to increase revenue and by how much, and create a projection over the next 6, 12, 18, 24 months. And then on the expense side, where you think you can cut some expenses or bring down things so that your bottom line will go up. Maybe the expenses also need to go up in the short term, though. Maybe they were understaffed and you need to hire more people. Maybe they weren't spending enough on advertising. Maybe you need to increase that budget. So taking those existing financials, putting them into spreadsheets, and starting to manipulate the numbers in a way that can paint a realistic picture for you going forward. Sometimes what I like to do is a best, worst, and mid-level scenarios, just so I can see how things are going. If your revenue really does start taking off, that might mean you also need to increase your payroll because you might need additional staff. If you're planning for that ahead of time, you can see, okay, if my revenue hits X number of dollars, that means I'm probably going to need another person, which means my payroll expense is going to go up that following month because I'm bringing somebody on. Versus if things are declining, you'll know that if things get bad by this period of time, I'm probably going to need to cut the staff. Therefore, my payroll budget can drop at that point so I can maintain a healthy bottom line. Hopefully, if you're going into the purchase, you are planning for growth, but you never know what's really going to happen. So having all of these financials in a way that projects out best, middle, worst, helps you know what you're going to be looking at for the next couple of years. So those financials are one area that you really want to focus in on when you're planning for the acquisition of the business. Your operations is the next area that you really want to dig in on and think about. So that can mean, depending on the size of your business, that can mean the organizational structure, who's reporting to you, who you want reporting to each other. To some extent, that's already in place when you're taking over the business. I don't usually recommend that you jump in and immediately change everything that's going on. Nobody likes massive change all in day one. So take your time before you do this, but at least start thinking about it. If I'm going to be the CEO, then who on the team is reporting to me, who is reporting to those people, how that's going to work, and what I expect out of them. So if you're going to be implementing some type of operating system like EOS, You want to start figuring out those pieces before the acquisition, but don't necessarily rush in and rush to implement them immediately. Just be thinking about how those are going to work when you take over. What key employees are staying? What key employees might be leaving? Even if they haven't said they're leaving, just making sure that you're aware of, you know what, this person's been acting weird the whole transition period. They might bounce with the seller when the transition happens. Do I have a plan for replacing certain people if I need to? Or do I hope that some of these people might leave? That can vary depending on the company and how you're going to be operating. Who do you need? Who don't you need? And that might be a conversation you need to have with the seller if you're not planning on keeping certain key people around so that they can prepare their employees or take them with them or offer them bonus packages to depart when they're leaving. Usually you want all the employees, but there might be certain cases where you don't need everybody in your new thinking. How you're going to deal with existing vendors and customers. What your plan is for letting them know about the transition. Planning that out ahead of time so you can get an email or a letter out to key vendors immediately. In some cases, if you're doing a asset sale where you're actually going to be a new entity, you are probably going to need to set up new accounts with those vendors. For example, when I was buying my wine and liquor store, I set up a new entity. I got a new liquor license. Each of my vendors I needed to fill out paperwork with, credit applications, W-9s, just general information about me and the new company. Even though they've been delivering to that store for 40 years, they still needed all my new information. So planning for that ahead of time, rather than scrambling after the transition, is another key piece of information that you want to make sure that you have a plan for. Customers as well. Are there key, depending on your industry, are there key clients, key customers that you're going to need to get information out to? Are they going to need to set up new accounts with you? And how are you going to make that as seamless as possible for them? If you are a company, buying a company that provides terms, payment terms to your customers, you're going to want to make sure that those customers, that you have a credit app on file from those customers for your company. You're going to want to make sure if you need W-9 from them, that you have that from day one, because you don't want to have to be scrambling at the end of the year to try to get that if they've been paying you money or you've been paying them money and you need to file certain documents with the IRS. So making sure you have a good transition plan for your vendors and customers is also important. And then just in terms of operations, to wrap it up, is the systems and processes. Making sure that you have a plan for A, learning about the existing ones, and B, implementing your new ones. And when and what are you going to be implementing, or what the plan is. Doesn't mean you have to stick to it when you actually get into the weeds, but make sure that you have a plan for what the systems and processes are going to be when you take over day one. The next area that you want to be thinking about in terms of business planning is your growth strategy, your growth plan. How do you plan to grow the business? Again, one of the things that you'll hear me repeatedly say across all of my videos and podcasts over time is you want to buy a business to grow it. You don't want to buy a business to sit there and maintain status quo. It will take you much too long to build your equity and to get your investment back if you're just sitting there doing the same things and making the exact same amount of money as the previous owners. Plus, you'll actually be losing money with inflation over time. So what is your growth plan? How are you going to advertise? Who are you going to advertise to? What kind of marketing initiatives are you going to take? Who is going to do those things? What platforms are you going to use? Are you going to hire external? You're going to hire internal? What's already working for the company? What's not working for the company? And again, this is where you have the advantage when you're buying a company. They may have tried 50 different things in the last year. You already have that experience and that knowledge to build off of rather than having to start from scratch. Looking into some of the demographics that they have traditionally sold to or that their customer base is, and seeing where you can add on, how you can improve, how you can expand, or how you can find more of those people. Another aspect of planning that you want to be thinking about is risk management. What areas of the business are at greatest potential for failure? What problems might pop up? What customers might go away? What employees might leave? What external factors, weather, tariffs, all different kinds of things could affect your business from day one? making sure that you're at least thinking about those different aspects and what might happen if X, Y, or Z happens and how you're going to handle it. If you're prepared for some scenarios, you'll be better prepared for other scenarios, even if you didn't think them all the way through ahead of time. Just that thought process and that planning about risk management is an important piece. Finally, the last piece that you really want to be thinking about is your exit strategy. I know it sounds crazy. You're just buying the business. Why do I need an exit strategy? Because you should always be thinking about your exit, even from the first day. You want to know what you're going to do with that business in the long run. Are you going to just hire management and let it run forever? Which that's still considered an exit strategy. But how are you going to do that? What redundancies are you going to need to set up to make sure that it can sustain itself for a long term? Are you going to build it to a certain level and sell it? Are you going to hold it for a certain time and sell it? Are you going to sell it to your employees? Are you going to sell it to a third party? Are you going to sell it to somebody in the industry? Just because you're thinking about it and planning for it today doesn't mean that you have to stick to that plan down to the T, but at least it gives you some guiding principles of how you're going to operate the business at the beginning. So, do you need a business plan to buy a business? I know I said no at the beginning, but after I just went through all that stuff, I think the answer is actually yes. You do want a plan. Does it have to be in a highly glossy, nice binder printout book that you can hand out to 1 million investors and bankers? Probably not. Does it have to be in a very fancy formal slideshow or video presentation? No, probably not. Should it be written down in a living, breathing document that you can reference whenever you need to? Yes, it probably should. That's what you really want to do, because a business plan is ever evolving. It's not something that you make once and never look at again. It's something that you should be updating and referring to on a very regular basis and sharing it with the people that need to see it on a regular basis. When I bought the wine and liquor store, I did prepare a good, solid 20-page business plan. I went deep into the market research. I looked at the demographics of the town that I was serving. I looked at what I could do with Facebook advertising and Facebook marketing. I looked at what products the current sellers were selling and what products I thought I could bring in to increase revenue and increase margin. Those were all things that I wrote down in this document. Did I give it to the bankers when I was applying for a loan? Yes, I did. Were they thankful for it? Yes. Did they absolutely need it? Probably not something that comprehensive. I think one of them even commented that it was the most comprehensive business plan they'd ever seen for the purchase of a liquor store. But it sure didn't hurt. So thinking deeply and spending the time planning out those things is important. I had the luxury of some time during that acquisition process, from the time I made the offer to the time we actually closed, that it made sense for me to be thinking and writing and planning all of those types of things. You should be planning those items that I just went through. So why not document them? Why not have them in a place where you can refer back to and constantly update and improve over time? Hope you found this helpful. I'd love to know your thoughts on the topic of business plans. Do it in a living, breathing document. Google Docs work great. Update it every month, every quarter, every year, whatever time frame works best for you. Please leave your comments below. Look forward to hearing from you. Hit that subscribe button, and we will see you again soon. Cheers.